in essence. Questions or discussion? Entertain a motion.
A motion to approve zoning permit ZP 20121218 under 5815B.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes unanimously. Zoning permit application for 15009 Gotham Manor Place. Mr. Schneider.
This is also a request for a deck, Mr. Chairman, and would be subject to the same standards, 58-15B. We are recommending approval.
Questions or discussion? Entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve permit ZP 201-30114 at 15009 Gotham Manor Place, under 5815B.
Hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Commissioner Ring, do you have an ARB update?
I do not.
Madam Mayor?
Council has tasked us with coming up with a preliminary map for the historic district.
Do we want to discuss that now, or do you want to leave that under
No, we can wait.
old business comp plan and ZTAs?
Well, either that or discussion items is C.
We had, Mr. Chairman, if I may interrupt, we had left that, actually the CLG that you see under 10D
Okay.
was more or less supposed to address that,
Okay.
that directive.
We'll address that at 10D. New business, Haymarket Baptist Church, both the rezoning and the final site plan. I'm assuming we can deal with these concurrently?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if you might, if you indulge me, I was going to do a quick presentation.
Sure.
And combine them both. Most of you are familiar with Haymarket Baptist Church. This application's been in for, not the rezoning, but the final site plan has been in since about 2008. It was tied in conjunction with the town moving forward on the streetscape improvement. We've met several times in the last year and a half or so to come to conclusion. So tonight before you is two requests. One is a rezoning request. This project or this property, Church campus crosses three parcels. They're proposing to consolidate those three parcels as part of the rezoning, and also part of the site plan. The issue is one of those parcels is a B1. So we more or less have the church campus, which is here, the church main structure, which is here. There's a parcel that comes out just to the east, and then there's a third parcel along the backside. Interesting story how that became a B1 zoning district, but what they're proposing to do is go ahead and bring the whole property under one zoning designation. We do have various requirements for buffers and setbacks between commercial and residential districts, so this just makes it easier not to have to try to waive or find some other alternative by buffering itself in the middle of a parking lot, if that makes sense.
So this will all be going to R1?
Correct. This is our transitional commercial policies apply in this case for the rezoning, and we have found that the requested zoning district is consistent with our zoning comprehensive plan. So it's simply rezoning one parcel as part of the campus to go ahead and bring it under the R1 umbrella for the whole property. The second part of the request, and that's actually the plan that I printed off for you. It's 3 sheets. There's a modification request on top. There's the site plan, and there's also the notice. And what I'm showing you here, referring to you here, is the site plan. They're proposing 2 improvements. One is to do a 3,900 square foot sanctuary addition on the front of the building, and also pave the lots. 80 spaces are required under the ordinance. They're doing 146 spaces. This is meant to deal with those folks that patronize the church and also patronize the school that's associated with the use. So included in the plan set was a determination that they requested from the town council on several issues. One is the 35-foot building setback requirement we have for uses in the R1 district. Also, streetscape improvements along the Washington Street facade, and also lot coverage. And the council had found that absent the 35-foot setback, the 200 requirements, it was not subject to. At the time that they had a preliminary plan approved, we had not amended the ordinance to limit the lot coverage to 40%. So they were more or less grandfathered under the old standard. In regards to streetscape improvements, since we've already had that phase of the project underway, council found that it would not make sense to then obligate these folks to build those improvements as part of the site plan. So that is for your review within the plan set. Another part of the proposal is on the west side of the property. There's an existing fence separating the church from the animal hospital next door. They're proposing to extend that fence to the rear of the property. Part of the development of the site today, there's a tot lot more or less up against the northern part of the property. They're proposing to extend that, and also underneath that tot lot area have their underwater stormwater management system. And so what we would otherwise require a 25-foot buffer adjacent to a commercial district, having that stormwater facility underground in that location precludes them from meeting that. So what they have offered to do is go ahead and do the opaque screen, which would be the fence, and they've alternatively increased, I'm going to change views here. This is their landscape plan. So what they've alternately provided is the opaque fence to match what's existing, and then they've, for lack of a better term, beefed up their screening adjacent to the R1 district, or the R2 district to the back, the villages of Haymarket, and also the Long Street Commons. With regards to perimeter parking lot landscaping, the area that separates the town properties, while it's not entirely clear that the ordinance would require it, we did talk to the applicant about addressing the issue should a parking lot ever be developed on the town property. They've agreed to provide additional landscaping, not in this area where there's some stormwater systems and some other things underneath the right behind the parking lot and adjacent to the property line. They've alternatively provided some additional screening. I'm sorry, this graphic's a little bit old, but if you look on your graphic on the second sheet, you'll see the increased landscaping adjacent to the heritage property. So under the ordinance, we do allow the alternative screen to be provided, and they requested that through their letter, and they've per the ordinance provided the alternate screen.
So these modifications are sort of a combination modification stroke waiver in a way? Okay.
And in the cover letter, it addresses the required standard and the ordinance standard that allows the alternative screen. So in terms of commission actions, the recommendation would be with regards to the rezoning to go ahead and move it forward to the town council for a joint public hearing. This site plan tracks with the rezoning. Obviously, the cart before the horse type of activity. We would recommend that you go ahead and keep the discussion or keep the item, the site plan on the agenda while the council looks at the rezoning next month. Have the council refer that rezoning back to you, and at the same time you look at that application, you would also make a recommendation regarding the site plan.
Have you talked to the clerk? I know we're having some issues with advertising lead time because of the change in carrier for our advertisements. Do we have enough time between now and March 4 to adequately advertise the public hearings?
We do. The clerk went ahead and gave notice that we, based on the commission's action, we may recommend a joint hearing, so they're anticipating that coming, and we'll be able to schedule it in time. Happy to answer any questions, but again, we're not looking for a recommendation specific to the site plan this evening. And with regards to the rezoning, it's simply moving it forward for a joint public hearing so that they can be married back up either in March or in April.
Anybody?
The applicant's representative is also here this evening, Mike Coughlin with Lucian Legal Eye, if you have any questions.
If there's no objection, I would move that we direct staff to advertise a zoning map amendment for rezoning 2012-1106 for GPIN 7397/09/2472. An address for that, do you?
I'm sorry.
14820.
For 14820 Washington Street. And a joint public hearing for modifications and waivers to sections 58-701, 702, and 703 B, C, and D of the town code. The joint hearing to be held with the town council on March 4. Have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Right?
Aye.
There.
Aye.
There.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Motion is unanimous. Oh, town planner report.
Mr. Chairman, very quickly, I mentioned to you before the John Marshall Commons, which was the rezoning proposed east of town, basically between Pace West School and the retail shopping center. That is not moved any forward. Has not moved forward. So no update on that project. We did come in with Midwood, which is if you've ever driven west on 55, out past the new shopping centers on your left, you'd see these pylons that are painted white, green, and blue. That delineated what they called a Midwood project, or the Midwood development, which was more like a flex industrial, flex office type of use that was approved probably 10, 15 years ago at this point. They have submitted a comprehensive
2004, yeah.
plan amendment to switch from the commercial plan district to residential. They're looking at developing an age-restricted housing product. So in March, they will, the Board of Supervisors will decide whether or not to initiate that comprehensive plan amendment. The applicants did come and meet with, set up a meeting with the mayor and myself. Unfortunately, the mayor wasn't able to make it, but was able to listen to their proposal. In a way, it's a benefit to the town simply because you're taking out some of the accessory retail and other office uses that we could otherwise provide within our district. I think from the county perspective, they're not wanting to give up, likely not wanting to give up that substantial amount of commercial development, especially in proximity to the hospital, what we've seen recently with the retail is being developed. So it is beyond kind of our immediate boundary. So other than simply outlining that this side of town is our industrial and commercial districts, I'm not sure at this point we would come up with an opinion either way, whether or not to support it. If and when the CPA gets done, there's an accompanying rezoning, which would actually get into the details about traffic and all the other aspects. So I will keep you up to speed on that. Heathcote development, I'm sorry.
I just want to comment on that. I personally find it kind of interesting that the zoning classification of the Midwood parcels was used in part to justify the rezoning of both parcels across the street.
Correct.
And now that both of those parcels across the street have been rezoned to compatible, what was deemed compatible uses with the Midwood development and with the Midwood plan, now we're coming in, or they're now coming in and changing the classification of that to a zoning category that would have been incompatible with both Haymarket Crossing and the Walmart site. So it seems like it's always a moving target over there. I would kind of take issue with the development competing with the town. I mean, my understanding of what was actually over there, it was planned as part of the original rezoning. I believe the scale of that development and the office type use contemplated or / industrial, which I don't think was actually coming, it was contemplated, was on a scale that I don't think the town could have supported in any way, because you're talking about much larger buildings, much larger offices, and much larger entities. But it will be interesting to watch. I know the board has taken somewhat of a supposedly hard stance on not converting employment opportunities to residential. I guess we'll see how that breaks.
What they're arguing is that obviously there's proffers that go along with residential development. They're suggesting that since there's not a school component since students are not generated, that it's a savings, a net savings to the county, or a net profit to the county in terms of revenue. There's some debates back and forth whether or not that's true, but I imagine that's going to be the argument that they're going to come in with. And also less traffic. You're putting less traffic. They've estimated rather low, but they're saying versus the by right or the established use on the property. I'm sorry, not established, the entitled use on the property, that it would be less than that. So, again, we'll keep you up to speed. Heathcote development, that was the office complex that was proposed just north of town. If you cross over the bridge, there's two little abandoned houses that more or less would replace those. There's a 3-story building that's by right. Beyond that, up against Heathcote, it was originally a 6-story building. They've brought that down, I think, to 4 or 5. I'll have to double check, but that's to be going to public hearing here fairly soon. I was also asked to brief the commission that on a possible request to look at the old garage on Jordan Lane. Are most of you familiar with that? If you go up, hang a right on Jordan Lane, there's an old kind of dilapidated building up kind of on a knoll. It's zoned R1. The same medical group that owns the buildings north of town where the rezoning I was just talking about was proposed, they own that property as well. And so there's an interest with the town being willing to look at possibly replanting that lot for commercial instead of residential. It's been interesting. The town, we replanned everything north of 66 to match the county's land use designation. They've subsequently changed a lot of that along Old Carolina. So now seemingly we're residential against commercial. But nonetheless, we may or may not see an application come in within the next few months to see whether or not the commission will want to look at that. Sheets is still in conversation with the ARB over their design. When they get through that process, they will then come in with their site plan for the reconstruction. McDonald's also is in discussions right now with the Architectural Review Board. They may or may not get out of that group next month or not. Later on this evening, you're going to have a presentation or a discussion with Haymarket Self-Storage to address their outdoor equipment storage area. Other than that, there's no movement on, seemingly any movement on the firehouse. Can't seem to get a lot of feedback on the county whether or not they're going to choose to sell it or redevelop it.
They've hired a realtor for it.
Have they? Okay. And then also Pace West didn't seem to have, I believe there was a 45-day extension on the purchase contract. But other than that, we've not heard anything else on the development of that. So, okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Old business, 15161 Washington Street. Mr. Schneider, where do we stand on this?
This will continue to be tabled while we address the larger issue of a site plan for the entire site with Mr. Durham.
Any objection? Okay. Funeral home zoning text amendments. Want to bring us up to speed, Mr. Schneider?
Yes, sir. You held the public hearing last month. It was held over to this evening. They have since amended their application to exclude crematorium and permit mortuary and funeral home use as a special use permit within the B1 zoning district. I included in the cover memo the relevant district and plan policy with regards to that area, and be happy to answer any questions from the commission. There is a timeline. You're within your window with which to make your recommendation. And so we will need, unless the applicant agrees to an extension, you would need to make your recommendation this evening.
Go around the table. Mr. Ring.
No comment at this time.
Ms. Bear.
As originally stated, I think it would make more sense in the B2 district than B1. I think the issues that it's going to present in B1 far surpass the possible highlights of it. So my opinion has not changed.
Ed?
Well, I think we've kind of heard from the public here, weren't real excited about it. I think there's a need for this particular service. Maybe it's just not in that particular area. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
I concur with Mr. Robinson. But, I'd like to, for personal reasons, abstain from that particular discussion.
Sound noted. All right. I've put a fair amount of thought to this and reached out to a lot of people. And I share everybody's concerns. I've had a concern from day one regarding traffic, parking, and whether or not any of the B1 sites in town could accommodate this. I've looked at the map, I've looked at what we've got available in B1 zoning, what parcels could potentially be developed regardless of what is on there right now, and literally half, if not more, of the B1 parcels that are existing in town back to somebody's backyard. At the public hearing last month, we've heard a couple of residents come up and particularly address concerns about parking on Green Hill Crossing, or excuse me, St. Paul Drive, concerns with traffic, and whether or not that particular use in that particular location or a like location comports with the town's plan for the walking, whether it be the comp plan, whether it be the vision for a walking town. And a little anecdotal thing here, I have actually had to attend a funeral viewing on Friday night, which was in a very similar circumstance over in the city of Winchester at the Umps Funeral Home on the Amherst campus, or their Amherst
May I
campus.
interrupt you, meeting minute? I backed into somebody's car, it's a BMW, and it looks like a tail lights open out, so.
Would you like to call for a
Yeah.
10-minute recess or so,
Call
Bob?
for a 10-minute recess. That would be fine.
Please bear with us.
got plenty of money, he can get a big door about it.
Okay. As I was saying, I was having to go to a funeral at Umps Funeral Home in Winchester on Friday night, and the circumstances of that particular location were eerily similar to this. The funeral home fronts, in this case a 4-lane divided highway, had a church to the immediate right, and then a business section to the immediate left, and then residential all around the back of it. When I got there, the parking lot was full, and the parking lot alone was easily the same volume as this particular parcel. That was full, the church parking lot was full, and the residential neighborhood was stacked both sides of the street for a quarter mile up the road, which was one of my primary concerns here. So I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to support it either, at least in the B1. I just can't justify the use, that intensive of a use and that type of use, given what B1 areas that we have available. So if anyone's got a motion, I'll entertain it.
I'll make the motion. Whereas the Planning Commission has held a public hearing regarding the application for a zoning text amendment to allow for mortuary and funeral home uses in the B1 zoning district, and whereas the Planning Commission must consider whether the amendment furthers the public necessity, convenience, general welfare, and good zoning practice, and whereas the Planning Commission must consider whether the amendment is consistent with the town's comprehensive plan, and whereas the Planning Commission must consider the impact of the amendment on the services, character, and needs of the community, and whereas the Planning Commission has determined that the amendment is not consistent with the existing uses and character for the B1 zoning district, and whereas the Planning Commission has determined that properties in the B1 zoning district are not suitable for the uses contemplated in the amendment, and whereas the Planning Commission has determined that the amendment is not consistent with the town's comprehensive plan, and whereas the Planning Commission has determined that the amendment would have a negative impact on the town's transportation infrastructure, and whereas the Planning Commission has determined that the amendment would negatively impact the value of neighboring properties, and whereas the Planning Commission has determined that the amendment would not encourage the most appropriate use of the land throughout the town, and whereas each finding is severable, now, therefore, the Planning Commission of the Town of Haymarket finds that the amendment does not further the public necessity, convenience, and general welfare, does not constitute good zoning practice, and is inconsistent with the town's comprehensive plan, and recommends that the Haymarket Town Council deny the request for an amendment to allow the mortuary and funeral home uses in the B1 district.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Aye.
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 Ron,
Aye.
no.
Abstain from this vote, please.
Okay, as the council has also directed us to consider an alternative in the consideration of this application. I agree with Commissioner Robinson that there probably is a place for it somewhere within the town, and there is quite obviously a need for it in the western part of the county. The only area that I could find that we could conceivably squeeze it and fit it into something that would comport with the comp plan and the current zoning was the B2 area. It's a question of where in the B2 you would put it. I've drafted some draft language for B2 zoning for funeral homes. Hope everybody's had a chance to take a look at it. At this point in time, I'm willing to forward that to the town council for their review. If that's what everybody wants to do, I'll let it die at this point and forward no option. I'm not particularly beholden to either path, but if we do want to make that use or make some availability for that use in the town, I would suggest we forward this proposed zoning text amendment for the B2 area.
I think that's appropriate in that I believe we all agree that this is a service that is appropriate for the town in some capacity, and that there is a need for that service in the county, in this end of the county, and in the town. So codifying that, I think, would be the appropriate thing to do and move it forward to the town council.
Rebecca?
No, I feel we should go ahead and move it forward to the town council. It's unnecessary use, and we're going to have to, address it the next time it comes around anyway, so we might as well be a little ahead of the game and go from there.
I agree.
All right. In that case, Marshawn, did we assign a number to this initially?
I don't even know that you did. I can try to find it for you. So, Mr. Chairman, if I can just clarify. So we're disposing of the application as proposed. And then we're in a separate motion.
Correct.
Is to send the text amendment as an alternate language to the town council. Okay.
I thought I had a number for it.
Well, no, I'm sorry. Let me find the number for you.
Yeah, I'm looking back through this and not seeing it.
I thought I had brought a paper on it, but apparently I didn't.
I may have to go back and find the original
I can just make one up.
motion.
It's no big deal. I just thought I had brought it in. Oh, I did bring it in.
Where is it?
ZTA Blasius 121012. We'll just call this ZTA 121012A. In which case I would move the Planning Commission forward proposed zoning text amendment to allow for funeral home uses in the B1 district with a recommendation of approval.
B2.
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 That was an echo.
What happens when your headlight gets smashed or tail light gets smashed? With a recommendation of approval based on a finding that such an amendment would further the public necessity, convenience, general welfare, and good zoning practice, is compatible with the town's comprehensive plan, and the uses are suitable for those in the B2 zoning district. Do I have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Aye.
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 All right. Comp plan and ZTA is still on hold until we take care of the historic district map, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. CLG, Historic District. You want to take this or you want me?
Do we want to do CLG first, or do we want to skip down to discussion item B, since the person's here?
If there's no objection, I'll skip down to B. Take discussion item 11B, Haymarket Self-Storage.
We're skipping since he's here.
You guys are up.
You'll make me put my glasses on.
Did you guys introduce yourselves? I'm sorry.
No. I'm Dave Wolf, representing Wolf Realty, the owners of Haymarket Self-Storage. And we have the self-storage facility. And in the back, 6 acres, we would like to propose open storage parking for motorhomes, boats, and trailers, which we've already started to invite them to come over and realize that we need to have the town's approval for a special use permit. There is a need for this parking since the Prince William County law prohibits parking in the streets, and HOAs don't allow vehicles of that nature in their site. So I've had a lot of calls stating that they would want to park in that lot. The convenience of it, the access 15 and 66 they like, and it ties in with the storage business, moving storage and parking. So Bill Putnam with Burgess and Knifel, we've brought them on board to help us present this to town and hopefully get approval for a special use permit.
Right, this map represents the RPA in green, the other open area in lighter green. The driveway and the entrance is in gray. This is the proposed stormwater management facilities in the form of bioretention pits, AS rain gardens. So that's basically it, unless you have any questions.
Could you turn that to the camera so if anyone at home, they can, our Vice Mayor Tobias, if he's interested.
Is that all you had?
I was also going to ask that we would like to keep the property the way it is. It seems like it's a natural area that, there's a railroad tracks to the north and stream to the south. It's working the way it is presently with the stone and the gravel, as opposed to, which we're understanding that the zoning requires a paving. And we would like to request that we do not pave it at this time, because it doesn't really seem that the environmental issue would be any deterrent from having it gravel. Actually, if you pave it, you do have more environmental runoff, and expense is one key factor. To afford to have the people rent a space, parking space, would make it exorbitant to their cost if we had to invest in major paving. So that was the other issue I wanted to bring up, that we could get a special use permit with as amendment ZTA to have it gravel or at least partial minimum paving of the entranceways.
If I could
Yes.
step in real quick, I'm sorry, just to clarify. I think when we had met with them, obviously, as you know, they're out there storing it today. The idea, right now, our special, I'm sorry, all over the place. The I-1 districts requires that any use in the I-1 district be paved, any special exception use be paved. In this instance, this entire gravel area would have to be paved in order to accommodate this use. The intent is to deal more with our industrial areas that we have, frequent traffic, frequent storage of materials. In talking with the applicant in this case, they said, could there be a distinction made between storage of motorized vehicles and storage of non-motorized vehicles if the defining point is capturing hydrocarbons coming off from any equipment that leaks? This is especially an issue given its close proximity to the North Fork Creek. So we talked to the owner about it, saying you can certainly come to the commission and suggest, would the commission be willing to look at a distinction between motorized versus non-motorized storage as a special use in the I-1 zoning district. There are proffers that currently ride with the land, which require a stormwater management approach. So even if they were to do motorized versus non-motorized, they would have to make an effort to deal with stormwater management on the site. In this case, Bill, if I'm talking out of turn, your proposal would be to direct any motorized storage on asphalt to be directed into a stormwater management pond. But you had also talked about maybe doing perimeter treatments as well.
Right. That's where our retention pits come in. We would use Berman to direct all the storm flow to the pits, so they would be treated.
So for this to go forward, they would submit a zoning text amendment to separate storage versus motorized versus non-motorized. That would come through the process. If the commission and the council were to approve that, then they would subsequently need to submit a special use permit and a site plan.
So the motorized would be paved and the unmotorized would not? Is that what I'm
That's your-
understanding?
That was just an option, if we had to pave it at all from past the entrance.
I'm sorry, did I speak out?
That's quite all right.
Okay.
I mean, if it, first case, we would like to leave it the way it is. Second, if we have to do some, we are environmentally conscious and we want to protect the streams and the areas. There's also this company that's called Newpeg. They have all kind of oil absorption under a truck, a mat, a tarp, a berm that we could use and maintain that as an option as well.
That's not a permanent. That would require, it's a temporary mat per se that's placed under it, or is it placed under the gravel to catch it? Therefore, somebody could remove the mat or destroy the mat accidentally, or whatever. What's the permanence of that feature?
Well, they're coming out with, it started out to be just a temporary thing, but now with this, their 2013 catalog, they have permanent mats that are weighted in vinyl, and then there is a temporary mat interior. It can be driven over. Water can go into it. It'll be evaporated. The oil stays, and then changed out and sent to the recycling process for that. And they have larger. If you want to, Carrie,
It's like a filter in a Filterra. You have to switch it out periodically and replace it.
And the other option you mentioned, if you don't pave, you're talking about channeling it through berms or through other methods, taking that runoff and going
into these bottle retention pits, which I have some details of some that we have designed, if you want copies. Basically, it's a filter media with a pipe to the bottom, and it's designed so you can take care of the best management practice in water quality, in addition to water quantity, like a pond. Except here you have plant material in it, so you have trees, the right kind of bushes and everything. It can be an asset. It's not ugly like an open, so-called dry pond.
And what happens to those, what happens to the gas or the oil or whatever's there that washes into that pond? What happens to it at that point?
it gets filtered out, and, depending on the use, you can take out the media and replace it. Again, it's just like any of the other BMP filter media. You do have to replace it periodically, except this is longer term. And, a lot of jurisdictions prefer this, like I said, to the open ponds or the filters where you have to change out the filter annually. It just depends on, and this is not the end of it when you design it, of course. There's a maintenance program, there's an inspection program to ensure that it's functional. But that's why a lot of people like it better.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Is the size of the pond itself in relation to the number of expected vehicles, or what? How do you determine
It's based on the drainage area.
the size of the area itself? So it has nothing to do with what you might be putting there or how many?
Right, but you have to take in, but that's a function of the surface, and the whole idea behind it is to collect all the stormwater runoff and run it through that filter media.
So everything from that space.
Right.
Bill,
How is that space graded right now? I don't know that I've been back there for a while.
There's I'm sorry, just to clarify, under this proposal, you would be draining from gravel into these.
Right. I think that seems to be where they'd like to be.
This is kind of,
Which I understand that completely. I understand the reason for the pavement thing, but I understand where you're coming from completely as well.
The topography, it's actually been raised. They got a floodplain alteration. So if you come out today on the right-hand side, so basically you got the self-storage here, you got leaf areas up here, you got these done. Drive across the railroad track. It's paved to this point here. I want to say it's kind of a slope, kind of a down, kind of a raised area to your right, kind of graded down and away. Down in this
So there's
little
already a
location.
natural progression that direction.
Correct, and that's man-made. Up here, you kind of have a high spot in this area that would drain this direction and also more or less drain this way too, right?
yeah, with Barming, we would try to get everything to
Yeah.
location on each side.
So this is lower than this side. This kind of has a knoll in the middle of it.
Right.
It slopes this way, it slopes that way.
But it's predisposed to work already, is what I was really, where I was headed.
Yeah, I think some of it right now, water drains down onto that road.
Yeah, it's
And then kind of circles back to the railroad track and then kind of works its way all the way back around. But they have some grass that's there. The biggest concern that we had noted to them, and which I believe they're addressing right now, is they're parked close. Their motorized vehicles are parked within the 100-foot RPA we've got to stay out of. So they've already, I believe, gone and moved those vehicles out of that. So
Do you have a proposed mix for motorized and non-motorized transport?
It's probably going to be about 20% motorized and 80% non, is the way it's turning out naturally right now. Now, I can also restrict, if someone calls up and says, I have a dump truck and I want to park it down there, or a tractor trailer, I can say, no, it's not, the site is not suited for that, if that's what it takes. But I won't have any trouble filling it with just boats and campers, non-motorized.
Boat still has a motor on it.
A boat has a motor on
A
it.
towable camper.
Yeah, I guess I was non-motorized, was a cargo type trailer or something like that, those types of things.
Yes.
I think we're thinking something that is self-propelled.
Right, no, I'm with you, yeah.
So-
Right. If it's towed, like
Gotcha.
all their streams.
Sorry to clarify again. So I guess your original request would be to keep it as it is, amend the ordinance to allow non-paved storage surface. This plan would take that condition today, berm it, and then drain any, because obviously gravel compacts somewhat. So it would take any of that sheet flow and direct it into these two stormwater facilities. The next option would be a combination of paved and non-paved for motorized and non-motorized, and then channeled into the.
What type of exposure do we have in other areas for this pavement, this non-paved option, if we choose to?
This is I-1, correct?
This is-
Correct.
Yeah, this
It would
would
be
affect
the-
what you do with the industrial.
VDOT's likely to get rid of it, but the lot, where a la carte catering is, there's that gravel storage lot out there. That would be the next, although that one drains into the pond that's just below it. The Rose complex, if they kind of do it already out there. But that would pretty much be it. That's our limited I-1 area.
All right. And what are you going to do with security access, lighting, et cetera?
We thought that, right now, there is no electricity to the site. We weren't going to fence it because it's bordered by the stream on the south side and the railroad tracks on the north. And I put some barrier out on the road. I've appreciated the Haymarket Police. They peruse it daily. And I have this camera on the road, so I can see access. As far as lighting goes, people will use their best judgment if they go down there and park and come out. It's not like they're hanging around down there. It's just...
The ordinance would not have a requirement because this doesn't typically, I guess you could argue it does conduct business after 5, but it doesn't, you don't have a structure there, so it's kind of hard to regulate the business hours.
So access is controlled by the controlled access into the...
You got a road in and a road out.
Yeah, but I mean, is that controlled access there?
Now, the other issue, I don't know if I should even bring this up or not, is a possible gate that would...
That's kind of what I was asking, if there was something already there like that or something similar.
Well, I had applied for a permit to put a gate in, and it was tabled because I didn't get the proper signatures. I spent a lot of money on this gate, and it's right there at the entrance of
Top of the hill.
Top of the hill. And a lot of people, when I first put it in, said, this is terrific. And it not only helped our site be secure, but it also kept the traffic that people think that's a throughway. And they're also trying to go to the sportsplex, and their GPS takes them right to our front door. They're always turning around, and then so it would really help us, and I believe the traffic.
Well, I just thought it might help to some of your concern that the possibility of people just hanging out back there. Because I can see somebody parking a camper back there and a bunch of kids saying, hey, this feels like a cool place to hang out. And nobody can see us because it's dark. That's kind of the way I think.
That's a possibility.
Never did that as a kid, right?
Never did that kind of thing. Absolutely not.
And that,
I was in bed by 9:30.
That would prevent that. And everybody would have access, the fire company, the police. It would be a remote control. So there'd be no restrictions.
The issue at the time, the issue at the time was the easements, that the town
I was
owns the
just
easement.
curious if there was something already there, and I was kind of speaking.
And you had also talked about maybe putting some kind of controlled access on the 2 entrances on either side. Through the special use permit process, you could develop conditions which could speak to security.
I just kind of thinking outside of what we're really talking about here. That might be helpful all the way around for what he's trying to do and limit our liability as well, I guess.
Well, security and access is more of a business issue. You're probably more likely to get business if you offer some kind of security, as opposed to somebody walking in there and knowing how to start a vehicle or tow a vehicle away. But it's not so much a zoning issue, but it's public welfare, that kind of thing issue. So there are a number of things that go along with that.
And to your concern, that's why the police were objectionable to the gate, because they wanted to be able to get down in there and see if any shenanigans were going on.
Yeah.
So.
My main concern is the environmental aspect of it. I mean, if we're talking motorized, we're talking motor homes, that sort of thing. I mean, these are, especially the newer one. I mean, the risk is probably limited, but if you're not paving that, it's, something's leaking, it's seeping in, it's drawn in. How often, my question earlier, how often, you said that the filters are typically pulled annually?
Right.
How, in this particular system, how often is it pulled?
Well, it's variable, and that's why we recommend an inspection program. And you can tell, when the media needs to be switched out, but it's based on experience, it's a much longer period than the other filter media because it's larger and it's based on size, and it's not just one media. You have, I could show you, that cross section shows you have soil, sand, a lot of different things in there. And the oil just kind of degrades too. It's almost like it decomposes, is what they found. But it's a variable life. It's based on inspection. But you might look at 10 years, I mean, seriously. Especially if you control the known and visible, any possible leaks or anything. We're not envisioning a lot of movement like in a normal automobile parking lot, where the cars switch in and out frequently and so forth. This is a longer term use.
I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but I do have some concerns. I mean, they're largely environmental concerns, very much on the same ones that have already been voiced. But I've got an additional one too. You couldn't have located it in a more environmentally sensitive area of the town, I suspect. And above and beyond all the concerns that have already been raised, I'm hesitant because I'm curious fearful what DEQ might come back and do to us, and by that I mean the town in the future. They've had quite a number of recent changes in statute. There are probably more statutory changes coming as a result of the Chesapeake Big Act, and I'm afraid that if this isn't done properly, or even if it is done properly, given the way they changed the rules, that since DEQ is now coming after the jurisdictions in addition to the property owners, there is some liability for the town. Can we get around that? Can we address it? Probably. But I'd like to see a lot more detail on that. Restriction on vehicles, absolutely. I want to see some hard set restrictions in terms of what you're going to allow, what you're not going to allow. No self-propelled equipment for one. Anything that, any heavy diesel equipment, semis, dozers, whatever, I think would be key to that. I'm also concerned about what the people who would be renting the space from you would be doing down there specifically. You got people come back from a camping trip. What are they going to do with the waste from their camper? What are they going to do when winter comes with their boat motor? Are they going to sit back there and try and winterize it back there and dump it? I'd like to see some sort of restriction or overview or purview over that to ensure that type of thing didn't go on, and that everything that entered had already had its waste dumped or had its, if they're going to store the boat for the winter and they're going to winterize the engines, that everything is drained prior to going down there. And last but not least, I'm kind of torn on this because it's kind of ugly, but I think you're going to have to do something more than simply a gate in terms of some sort of perimeter security, lighting. I would suggest you have at least some minimal lighting, because I'm not so concerned about damage to vehicles or vandalism to vehicles, because essentially that's going to fall on the vehicle owner. But what I am concerned about is creating a circumstance where we're actually creating the potential for a public nuisance. I mean, I didn't go to bed at 9:30 at night, and there weren't many fences that I couldn't climb, and not much mischief that I couldn't get into at any number of ages. And it just seems like you're creating an irresistible target for some, whether it's kids that want to go back there and just hang out, kids that want to go back there and misbehave, adults that want to go back out there and steal equipment off of the vehicles. I want to see something a little more concrete, a little more tangible in terms of, I guess, both perimeter security and some sort of lighting, so that in case something does go on at night, any aberrant behavior is likely to happen, that there's something in place to either deter it or make it easier to detect. So, I mean, I'm willing to entertain it, but those are going to be the issues that I'm going to want to address.
Mr. Chairman,
My
if I
turn.
may, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Huh?
No, sure.
Being that guy, I'm sorry. I think a lot of what you're talking about would be indicative of whether or not it's paved or not paved.
Yeah.
And to me, that again goes back to the special use permit. And it's good that you're getting feedback now, because even if they did approve the ZTA in your favor, you'd still be asked to incorporate all these variables in there as well. So, sorry, I just wanted to make the distinction.
I think that the partial paving, with part being gravel, part being pavement, from all of our preliminary meetings that we've had, is more what I would be leaning towards approving. However, the caveats on motorized versus non-motorized, I'm sorry, if it's a trailer with landscaping equipment on it, with mowers and hedgers and trimmers that are all gas and can be leaking, that needs to be on pavement. Because even though the trailer itself's not motorized, everything in it is.
Right?
So-
That's true, yes.
Well, it doesn't really sound like that's kind of a business you're targeting, though, from your initial.
I do have a few landscapers with trailers
Are they
right now.
parking
And because it's reasonable
For the same reason they can't park on the street.
Yeah.
for that main reason. And it just seems that, I guess it would be kind of like these commuter parking lots where people go in for the day and they come back. They're not really fenced. They are lit. They are paved. But it could be like self-policing. I really haven't had a lot of nuisance back there, and I'm monitoring it very, very heavy, and the police go down there daily. So, of course, there's always that option that people are going to do that.
You start parking 10, 20, 30 boats down there, or travel trailers.
$75,000 mobile, motor home.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
You change
for
the
the
dynamic
security. I'm for,
dramatically.
I'm for the light. If we could probably cost effectively trade off the paving for the fencing and maybe the lighting, it just has to work financially as well. But I believe there is a need for that in the town, or we could move out of town. Go find a lot that's, a couple doors out and try to do it there. And we don't want to move out of town because it's connected to the property that we presently own. So we're hoping that we can do, work together.
Well, those are my concerns, and that's what I'd
Okay.
like to see addressed.
And just because we're throwing out those restrictions maybe it's for future, but repairs on the lot as well. I think there should be some, because that just goes right back into the.
Absolutely. I don't permit that now. Matter of fact, I had a conversation with the dump truck because our mat that we have presently down under that truck was collecting some oil. I said, you run around with this truck, daily, doing your business, and you don't want to have it fixed? He said, yeah, we're addressing that. We're getting a gasket fixed this weekend. So, and I would say, you can't park it here. We just don't want this. So definitely conscious about that.
Anything else? Well, you've heard our concerns. I mean,
Right.
you can address those and
Okay.
talk to Marshawn about how to begin the process.
You do that, just a decision, I guess the feedback from, sounds like, was it more of a all gravel or more of a combination between the two?
I think everybody's going to want to see paving. Correct me if I'm
A
wrong.
combination of the two.
A combination at least, but definitely for the motorized area.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Which brings us back to
The CLG and the
CLG. Yeah, whenever you want to. He's on with crutches, don't bother him.
Well, we don't need a town planner for this. Go ahead, Bob.
All right. At their last meeting, the town council and Councilman Tobias tasked us with a very short time frame, i.e. immediately, to come up with a suggested initial draft of a reduced historic district. I took the map that was presented last year, tweaked it in accordance with some comments that I got from the current composition of the ARB, some negative, some positive. What I gleaned from the town council's debate, for lack of a better term, on the issue, and I've come up with this: the area within the blue outline, all shaded in yellow, being I guess a starting point, taking you from east to west, north to south. It would cover essentially the first row of houses on Route 55 through Haymarket Station and Green Hill Crossing on the south side. Pretty much the front half of the Pace West property, the entirety of the town's properties where the PD and the food pantry are currently located. The first row of houses along Washington Street between St. Paul and Madison Street, a little deeper on the other side since that's zoned somewhat differently. It's currently B1 and it's contemplated in the commercial transitional zone, so I moved it a little deeper over there so that you would have a little more control from what you see from the street, since the building, one is going to have to presume that the massing of the building there is going to be substantially larger than what would be on the other side of the street. And then you get into sort of the core historic district, literally from 66 down Jefferson Street, and then from 55 and Jefferson Street all the way to the creek. I didn't think it was particularly necessary to extend it over 66. Everything over there is, we're going to probably have to rethink anyway. What's over there is physically divorced from the town by 66. I mean, it's essentially acting as a natural barrier. I don't think that anybody, or most people, actually realize that what's on the other side of 66 is actually within the town, so why bother with it? As you go south on Jefferson Street, you'll notice there's a little kick out over on Madison Street, which covers, I believe, the one house that's actually on our register on Madison Street. I got into this argument last year with the ARB. Because of the way our zoning ordinance is written, anything that's 50 years older or older is considered historic, given as we're all advancing in age. What that essentially means is that a house that was built in 1963, i.e. a brick rambler, is suddenly historic. Well, unfortunately, that's most of what's on Madison Street is brick and clapboard ramblers. I don't find them particularly historic in nature. If you really want one, you can go to Fairfax, buy one, put it on a truck, and bring it back at any point in time, because they have literally hundreds of thousands of them. I don't think it's an architectural style that is likely to be eliminated anytime in the near future, although I would also suggest that nobody would really cry and wail if it were. So I've pretty much kicked Madison Street, Madison Court out. Have to include Fayette Street because of the church, because of the Cobb House, because of Winterham, and because of the requirements for adjoining properties, and that it pretty much takes up the entirety of 18th century, which I guess is okay because they don't have an HOA, unlike the other developments in town. Covers the entirety of the town center property. It covers the museum, covers Exit Heritage Realty, and then it covers a band from the town center all the way out to the Sheets and the CVS. It seems relatively, there seems to be some coherence. I mean, most everybody seems to believe that we have to protect the gateways in the town, to protect the look of the gateways. Is there much we can do with Sheets? At the end of the day, probably not. But it does lend some control over what happens over there in the business and the industrial district. I've scaled it dramatically back from what was actually proposed last year. I don't particularly see any reason to extend the historic district ordinances to a warehouse 200 yards back from the road that nobody can see. And that would be the Durham property in the back. I'm open to any suggestions. but we're under a deadline of kicking something out to them tonight.
You're welcome.
We eliminated Madison Street and Madison Court, based on, the age of the type and style of the home.
They're not on an arterial either.
However, they don't have an HOA either. So do we have to include the newer homes in 18th century that form this little horseshoe, with them being even newer?
Well,
It goes to the structure of the ordinance, the enabling ordinance. No, you don't have to. I just did that to preclude an argument. I was trying to be moderate in my findings, let's say. I honestly, I have no particular problem exempting 18th century. The only houses that I would not do that for are the ones that are immediately fronting on or adjacent to the parish hall and across the street from the rectory, or whatever they call that, and ones directly across from St. Paul's Church.
I'm just looking at the ones that, the new 18, the true 18th century homes that make this little horseshoe, not the first couple on this row.
I think you
and
have to
none of
leave.
these.
I think you have to leave that section in
because it's contiguous.
because it's contiguous to what you've already determined is
And then we're
historic.
gonna have to leave that in because that'll-
Yeah, and then you're just
I was just
you're
asking.
cutting it down to just a couple of houses, and then you're going to. It's just easier to leave them all in than try and pick the half that you're going to leave in and the half that you're going to exempt out. And
Doesn't the enabling statute also say that you have to have a justification for declaring these things historical? And saying that they're 50 years old is arbitrary and fast.
well,
No,
we
but
actually
that's-
have a list. We actually have a designate. We actually have partially met CLG in that we have a list of structures that we've deemed
We have our
historic.
inventory in our
Not
contract.
even look at structures. If you take, up by the sheets and all that kind of stuff, that's open land. Is that historical in nature?
It's included because the language allows you to include arterials that access your historic district. I'd have to actually look at
Yeah, I think
the whole
I think it's
language.
fairly important too, because, we've already kind of started that concept going down there now, so if we don't,
Looking at the way the CLG is written and its intent.
No, forget CLG. You got to look at the enabling statute for the historic district,
Okay.
and that's where the key to it looking like this is, because it's got some specific language, and I don't know if it's in our code. I think it is.
Well, I've been looking at this as a two-pronged approach, to give us a true historic district, but to also make it comparable to if they want to move forward with CLG status.
Yeah.
One of the other things was about all of the new building within your historic district. So if CLG is really something everyone really wants to entertain, we may not be able to keep our gateways in it because they're not going to have, there's going to be too much new building, and that's going to take away the CLG.
Not a justification for
Yeah.
that.
Yes. Sorry, I left.
chime in anytime you want.
I tend to do that, right? I think, remember, is the district is not just historic buildings. It's one thing, it says, if I can read from it, pursuant to the Code of Virginia, the purpose of imposing special requirements in addition to those requirements pertaining to the underlying zoning, in order to protect and perpetuate those areas or structures which are of historic, architectural, or cultural interest. So it's not just simply buildings themselves. It's, do you have some kind of unique architecture? Is there some cultural significance to, Mr. Holfish and his family marrying intertwined? I'm teasing there. I'm being facetious. So it's meant to. Yeah. So it's 50 years or older. Is it really a benchmark? No. And so then it gets into, okay, let's say in your historic district you have 10 buildings, and there's 50 buildings total. Then it whittles it down, saying, okay, how does the rest of that district, or rest of those buildings, or new buildings, relate to those historic structures? And that becomes the purview of new construction versus old construction.
Right, because we run into that a bunch, not only down here across from the old church, but we also run into that down by Greenhill Crossing where you've got all that new construction. maybe able to bring in AC Watts, okay, that's fine. But all of Haymarket Crossing and all that kind of stuff, that's not historic. But again, if you want to control your access points,
It's defensible under the statute, I think.
I think there's
Is
a lot
it-
to be said for that, though, the access points and controlling it from that point inward, because if that's going to be the defined line, then you want to have some control over what people see when they come in, too.
That gets to the architectural side of it. Maybe it's not historic, but you review the architectural
Anything else?
the architectural look of it. It's kind of like, most of our buildings in town are 2 stories. 3 stories should probably be argued. We've never had a 3-story building in town, so, not to revisit buildings that are already built, but that's kind of being able to look at the massing and the size and then cultural areas, I don't know, other than the fairgrounds being cultural area, I don't know if we have another cultural areas.
Like I said, this is pretty much a devil's advocate map. Personally, I agree. My personal thought would be to condense it down even more, if you want something that's actually defensible. But at this point, as a starting point,
how many times do you go back, though?
Yeah.
I think if there's a way to cut this down, again, the horseshoe, we can cut off the back half of the horseshoe. It makes maybe an ugly line, but, you can cut that off because that's not truly historical. You do have you've got the one house here that you might need to do something with. But try and reduce it as much as possible to make it as defensible as possible in the future. Particularly, and the concept of the open land, maybe, okay, that's open land, it's got no historical value, it's probably always been open land. But if it's controlling the gateway and you control the architecture in it, that is a viable use for that.
what I would, my personal inclination, this is just my thoughts, I would actually stop in terms of going west to east. I would cut off the entirety of it from Louis' lot, whatever the last building on Louis' lot across the street is. My personal feeling would be cut it off there and, institute at some point in time an overlay district for that area from that building to Sheets. If you still want to control the architectural stuff, put an overlay district, but cut the historic district off there on that end. I don't think there's much you can do with the core area from literally where we sit south to the creek. Just because you've got so many older structures intermingled in there, and you've got so many properties that adjoin them or abut them, that I don't think there's much room for fooling around with that. Everything behind us has already been pretty much torn down, so I'm not concerned about that. Because of the money that we've spent on the whole fish house, because of the structure that's up there with, details for the home, my suspicion is you have to leave it up to 66. You've already renovated on the other side of Jefferson Street, so you should probably leave that in.
So cut it off at the entrance to Long Street Commons?
You mean on the eastern end? What I would probably do, the only change I would make on the eastern end is exempt everything from St. Paul Drive to the edge of town on the south side. I think, given the structures you've got, given the hair-over structures and the arguments we've had over that, and particularly given Pace West, I think you need to leave the north side of 55 in it and run it all the way up to town. Now, I don't know how old, offhand, Peg Contrucci's apartment house is. I haven't looked at it.
Well, I think it goes back to that question. You got the church on there too.
You
So
have the
it's
church,
it's one of those things trying, again, to keep the,
But we've already developed the southern side. We've developed it to an architectural style. It's unlikely that, in fact, it's almost impossible that those houses would be raised and anything else put there since they're all incorporated into those HOAs, and I don't think there's any way.
Oh, I think I would agree, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the architectural style there is relatively safe. Yeah, somebody might paint some garish color on their shutters, but
But that's controlled by the
that's
HOA.
controlled by the HOA. So I'm not, I don't have any issue with knocking that section back and just drawing the line straight down the center line of 55.
What about Ms. Leonard's house?
Crap, we have to include that, don't we? Well, it'll be a little knob, just like it is on Madison
Well, I
Street.
can't remember if that's considered a contributing resource or
It
not.
is.
So, but yeah, probably between St. Paul's and Madison, I'd keep that in, but everything else
Yeah.
across the frontage except for Dottie's.
And I'm not even convinced. Now, if AC Watts' house weren't there, I would say I wouldn't even worry about between St. Paul and Madison Street. But since that's there, I don't think
And
we
you
have
got the other
much
one on
choice.
the corner too, yeah.
Yeah, the Madison Corner Shop. So I mean, I don't think we have much choice there. So if that's what everybody's inclination is, I can redraw this in the morning. And whatever everybody wants to do, whatever the consensus is, I'll chop or add.
No, you want to include Harrow Run case or exclude?
Include.
See, and I think it would actually be more appropriate, like you talked, build an overlay district for the Sheets Inn, so that you can control it that way. I don't know that you can consider that historic. There's nothing there.
There's nothing there.
Except for
And
the
nothing.
businesses.
Yeah,
And I agree that the town should keep control over that, but I don't know that a historic district
it's the proper mechanism. I don't need to.
But yeah, I would agree with that.
I think we can do an overlay district and just really outline standards in code that people would have to follow, rather than,
Because then it becomes an administrative rather
Yes.
than an objective determination.
yeah, rather,
You
exactly.
did.
I'm sorry, I missed the conversation too. How are you dealing with the buildings like Lee Berry and cutting some of those?
Overlay district,
Okay.
which we'll address after we.
No, I just meant for this draft map, that we're just kind of, you're just kind of arbitrarily going through buildings and,
Just about,
yeah, you cut Century Stair in half.
Well,
You're out of control.
Well, that's going to be fixed on his next one. Yes, half the building has to follow historic guidelines,
Oh, I
and
just
the
told
other
him,
half
yeah.
does not.
You did it with pace, why can't you do it Century Stair?
Oh, no, that's the county that did that. That the
Yeah.
actual.
I know. I'm just,
there is a method to my madness with regard to Case West. There are some other reasons to leave it within the historic district, above and beyond the obvious. But
all right, so
Well,
really,
it's more than 50 years old. So there we go.
well, it is architecturally relevant. It is on the list of contributing resources. Correct?
Which one, I'm sorry?
Case West.
Case.
Yes.
So we don't have much choice there. That's got to stay in.
so kind of what you're talking about here is shortening this arm, exempting this side,
Correct.
Except for Dottie's.
Except for
that,
Dottie's.
Maybe, yeah, okay. This side pretty much stays the way it is.
Yeah, I may have to tweak it just a little bit here and there on some of the lots.
So
But
for the
I
most
just did.
part-
I just did this kind of a broad brush.
Right. All of this is historic. This,
I would even.
Because it abuts.
because it abuts, so first of all, this stuff over here, so you gotta get all of these houses.
Yeah.
And then there's enough in here that it's abuts, that you've gotta bring these guys in.
Yeah, because you got Michelle Neal Hurd's old house across there on Jefferson Street, Tasha's house.
Yeah, because after
My
I
house.
after I stopped back and looked at it, and,
You just
that's
happen to be next door to
basically
Tasha, so you have to
the
come in
center
and
of our
get your
historic
fence
district. We really can't have this little loophole cut out of it, so.
The shack across the street that I wish would burn down one day. I didn't say that, did I?
Okay. And then, all right, on Bold Carolina, is there any, you wanna leave all of this?
Yeah, honestly, going up Old Carolina, I could probably cut it off at the end of details for the home.
That's what I was talking about earlier.
Because I don't think including that small section of Sherwood Forest or the backyard of Long Street really accomplishes anything.
And there's not an entrance for Sherwood, so it's going to be the backyard of part of Sherwood anyway.
I mean, it's,
I mean, technically, the map can show it going to the bridge, but it's not going to, the details for the home is going to be the last parcel that actually goes.
I can cut it off at details for the home, which ties in right at the entrance for Long Street.
Okay.
Okay, I think I have it drawn now.
So it's kind
How
of,
we just,
yeah, okay,
I think I have it,
yeah, okay, that's pretty much it.
because,
Yeah.
well, except I had cut it off there, but now it
But
comes
now
down
it's-
here,
yeah.
so.
So let me make sure I understand this. We're cutting it off there.
the other side of the museum, right?
No, I was going to leave
Everything down there.
everything in Louis' parcel because of Winterham.
So we do have to include Winterham.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where do I need to bring this? Is that one Winterham?
Basically from Giuseppe's west.
So, yeah.
And you're including Giuseppe's?
Where's the map?
It's under here.
So are you going to include the building that Kern and Whittington, those guys are in? The Remax, that the Remax building that's on this side?
That's what we're looking
Yeah,
at
how
now
you-
that he's changing.
Why would you leave that building?
Well, I would just put it down 55 again.
So, all right. So we're talking all of this, this, that's Winterham. So you would start, you can't build here, so you might as well start at the railroad tracks, come across this property line. Let's incorporate that one. Pull it up here. Come straight up the side. This is Winterham. So this would be Louis' building here.
And then use 55 again.
Stop, yeah.
Come back across here. Forget Kern and Whittington. Forget
Giuseppe's.
Giuseppe's. Pop it up here to the edge of Exit Heritage Realty. Come across to the town property line.
Do we need to come back any further on Fayette before the subdivision? Are any of those houses something we want to?
Well, it's a trailer. You
It's-
got,
Brian's house is in essence a
sorry.
A motorhome?
double wide.
prefab.
What
double
about the
wide.
other smaller ones in Eric's and?
Burned, gone, bulldozed. I think there's only one left, isn't there?
There's actually 3.
Yeah, there's 3 or 4 that are still left back that
This one's
direction.
burned down.
This one's burned.
These 2 are still there. That one's in
I thought this one was, I think one of those was uninhabited. It wasn't in real good shape. I don't particularly see the value. It's not an arterial street. Nobody goes down it. You know, we don't have it listed as any contributing structures, any of them. I don't see the value in it.
We're pretty.
So anyway, across the back property line of Heritage Realty to the edge of the town center parking lot. Much as I hate to, I guess we'll have to include the school, won't we?
Yeah, I would just follow the property line. all
Follow the
way
property line of the school, come to the back side of Ms., what's her name?
Green? No.
The one who's next to the Holfish house?
Miss Bailey?
Ms. Bailey. Along the back side of Ms. Bailey's property, this is the 2 vacant lots.
Yeah, details.
This is details for the home. Come across with details for the home. Cut out, pick up the old post office lot. And then run the property line straight down from the back of the old post office lot. This is the old Shepherd for the Hills building, Incorporate this entire lot.
Is this that vacant lot that's
Yeah,
right
the vacant-
behind?
That's the vacant lot that's behind
And you
it.
wouldn't incorporate that? I mean, I know it's a vacant
No.
lot, but
I would. You see any sense in doing that?
What, who owns this?
Yeah,
Jerry
this I'm
Kennedy.
going to leave in, because this is
Jerry Kennedy.
that's the El Vaquero,
Vaquero, come
and this
across
is
here.
Kay's Dentist
Yeah, come
here.
across here, bring it down to this property line. Actually, no. Because this is commercial transitional zoning, run the line straight across from the edge of this lot and run it straight across. So you've got
You're
some
going to cut
control.
properties in half?
Huh? Yeah, you can do that. Right?
You can split, it's like split zoning it, but I think what we're trying to do is you're trying to.
Establish an
reasonably-
area.
yeah, an area.
The view from the street,
The view from
essentially.
the street. And since you're talking about a larger potential scale of building, run it straight across this line here. That picks you all the way up till you get to the town property, bump it
Go
out,
up. Yeah.
and then I'm tempted to put the entirety of that parcel in.
This parcel?
That parcel.
Why would we not, I mean, what's the advantage to not including all of that property?
Our pro-
Here, you were talking about coming straight across here. What's the advantage of not staying out here? What's the disadvantage of not staying out there?
There's no real disadvantage.
I mean, it just seems like we
can
might.
do that.
I guess we've got a couple of challenges.
There's a
It's
justification issue.
likely, would they ever subdivide it? Perhaps. I mean, but if they subdivide it, how are they going to get into it? The only way they would get into these lots is from hunting back. It does create an issue, I think, where your master plan, if someone wanted to come in and consolidate all those lots, so like, let's say they put residential on the back side and they put commercial in the front, well, that would align with our district. But if they try to switch around or plan it, you're all of a sudden now, okay, this part of the site subject, this part of the site is
Right,
not.
that's kind of where I was headed. I was wondering if it might be,
Probably easier just to keep the whole thing in.
yeah, that's what I'm
I agree with
thinking.
that.
So,
So just come along,
Come along
come
the back
down,
line.
Yeah.
come down, and then just.
Get all of that,
Protect
yeah.
your property as well. To some
And Rebecca's?
degree. And Rebecca's.
yeah, maybe just following this whole area across it makes more sense. 'Cause it's
I think you might, I think it may well.
Take it all the way across
Yep.
from the post office.
Follow the lot lines.
Follow the lot lines, take it all the way out here, and then zip it straight back down the middle of the street until we get to Dottie's property. Dottie would be the anomaly. Come back, pick up A.C. Watts's house. And we have to include that. Come across the back line here. Actually,
And then just call it Jefferson and stop. You want the Masonic Lodge too, right?
yeah, you gotta do the Masonic Lodge. Question is, how much do we include here?
Well, I got the
Do
one
you run,
resource.
do you run straight down Madison Street? Everything on this side is and everything on this side isn't?
That takes care of, and these are all contributing resources, not this one, but this one, and that one, I believe, right?
Yeah, I think it's that one.
That's the purple house?
Yeah.
Yeah, everything left of this would be,
Yeah, we could run it straight down the middle of Madison Street. Let's see, this is Tasha's house. I hate to do that.
it's follow,
Since this is the structure that we have to protect, you have to cover that lot as well. I would run it across here,
Sorry.
here, down, and across Tasha's back line, and then I guess we have to incorporate those last two.
I would, if you got to the earlier question, well, I don't want to split zone the lots.
Yeah.
So.
So, down Madison, and then come down.
Come down.
So we're omitting
Come down.
781, but,
Because this is actually a separate lot now. Come down here and then just come to the back
gotcha,
line.
gotcha.
And tie it up that way. If there's no objections, I can have that drawn in the morning.
Yeah.
I think that sounds
We
pretty
make
good.
one, it's a technical matter, right, but one suggestion. I've had folks that have come and talked to me about the fairgrounds that may or may not be able to move quickly.
Is
I
that
think-
down?
Yeah, I think, and this is something we discuss later on, is I think if we want to do a corridor overlay district,
We're going to have to do it in a hurry.
I think you want to adopt it at the same
same
time.
time.
Anytime you
Absolutely.
reduce your historic district, you want to immediately.
Have a corridor.
Yeah, you don't want to leave that window
Yeah,
We
open.
don't want to have that window
There's a
open.
window of someone,
That's all it takes is somebody in there, they'll be here.
Well, it's not like we can't slow down the process on this.
we've got a council member here who.
Who's now looking, who's now paying attention? Yeah.
I've been listening the whole time, but since I can't see the damn thing, what's the point of looking at y'all? I can
There's a reason, there's a method to our madness.
He's handicapped, he should have come back down. So.
All right, so in terms of drafting the corridor overlay, that's a little bit,
That's a larger project.
yeah, because that's more complicated than saying, carving out the historic district.
Well, this is going to take some time in and of itself.
Well, you got to go to help. You got to go. So let's say you send this up to council in February, March, right?
Yeah.
And in March,
Yeah, in
for
March.
initiation, then they have to say, okay, we wish to initiate. Well, I guess we got to look at it this way. Do they want to? Do they take action that night?
Okay.
Okay. If they want to take action that night, then they have to have a resolution ready to initiate a zoning map amendment to redraw the boundaries of the historic district.
Right.
If they adopt that resolution that night, then they send it to the commission,
Back to us.
and the commission has however many days,
Requires a text change, too.
or text change. So unless the council gives you a window with which to come back, you can more or less take the time that you need to get it. When the council initiated, it's different than an applicant initiated.
I'm guessing
So-
it's going to be 30 to 60 days.
Well, we would
Is
also
what
need,
council will more than likely task.
Or I would just
the commission.
suggest keeping them apprised of how fast we're moving.
but you,
Well,
at the
I'm
same
looking
time,
at
you would
the
need
cases
the council
behind you.
to
I'm pretty
initiate,
sure.
a review to create an overlay district for whatever areas they have a concern about.
Correct. That would need to be, that would probably go with the same resolution to shrink the historic district at the same time.
Slapping one together that would be reasonably tight, probably not be that big a deal. We could probably come back and tweak it in the future.
I
I'd rather-
plagiarize Winchester, probably.
Yeah. mean, that works for me.
Okay. So, yeah, they, at the same time they initiate shrinking the district, they would initiate, now it goes to hearings, so it comes back to you, you hold your public hearings, you do all their stuff, send it back. So there's some time to tweak the language of the corridor overlay. I guess part of that too is I think just as a courtesy, you would want to have the ARB's input, but that can come as part of the initiation of the,
Jay can present it to the ARB.
No, the PC's liaison to the
Yeah,
ARB
so-
can take this
Come
to
on, it'd be
them.
more fun if Jay did it.
They had their input at the last ARB meeting, their liaison was out from. They had their input, it was discussed that evening.
I think I'll see more of just the actual boundary that's,
Fish brought up,
It
yeah.
doesn't, no,
no?
it's a courtesy.
Okay.
to go back. It doesn't have to,
All right, I'll take that as a directive to forward that to council tomorrow along those lines. Actually, exactly along those lines. And I guess we'll be hearing back from council and be dealing with this next
Do you
month.
want any findings or general statements with it, or no?
All they asked for was a
Shrink it.
draft
Send me a
map,
picture.
Well, I think, you know,
a suggestion.
you're including all your contributing resources.
I'll put together a
You're
memo.
defining, I mean, there's some specific points you can use to
Are you guys acting on
justify.
that in March or on Wednesday?
March.
Tuesday?
March.
March? I don't remember what the motion was.
It was our next meeting, it's the continuation.
Continuation meeting. I think there's only two things.
That's right, that's right.
Continuation meeting. The whole agenda's still open, it's a continuation meeting.
They could add
Therefore,
it
we
if they
can
wanted.
modify the agenda if we chose to. You can. We can.
I mean, I can have it done in the morning. It doesn't take that long. But do you really want to fight about it at the continuation meeting? I don't know. Whatever's your pleasure. But I'll have it out tomorrow morning. I'll get it to Jen tomorrow morning.
I have a motion on the floor, I'm waiting for a second.
What would the motion be?
A motion to adjourn.
All second. All in favor? I gotta go out and look at my damage. He creamed it pretty good.
You seem to